Hello YouTube, this is Matthew Williams doing another one of his little videos in his bathrobe, and I've had people slagging me off recently about this, but then again it's better than seeing this hairy chest. So, reason I'm doing this video is just to talk about the BLT team and Nancy Tablott. And Nancy Tablott rang me up, God, it must have been about 9 or 10 years ago now. And when I was living in South Wales, I was quite surprised to get the call, and she rang me up and she says, sort of basically laid the law down, about how I couldn't possibly know that circles were man-made. This is when I was actually involved with making circles, but it wasn't known that I was a circle maker. But I'd been telling people, in reports that I'd been doing and things that I believed circles were man-made. So Nancy thought it was her duty to ring me up and put me right, because I was obviously very deluded as a researcher and obviously couldn't make up correct decisions about these things, so needed some help. And she rang me up and she told me, no, there's no way that these things are made by people, because the scientific data says so. And I said, okay, well, what does the scientific data say? I mean, and she said, well, there's plant samples have been sent into the labs, and there's cellular changes which couldn't be the work of humans. And I'm like, okay. Now, while she was telling me all these things, of course, running in the back of my mind, I actually know that the circles are made by humans, because I have been one of those humans and I know the people who are doing them. So, basically, Nancy actually carries on telling me about these scientific samples, but a lot of it is just washing past me, and I'm going, okay, well, fair enough, whatever. And I just sort of said, well, look, I have strong evidence that I believe these are man-made, and I know some of the people who are making them, and I just think you're wrong. And she said, oh, well, you're very much wrong about that, and she sort of like cut off the phone call. And I'm like, okay, whatever, this is her belief system, this is what she wants to believe, and, maybe there is scientific evidence out there that's showing there's something weird going on. But the thing is, how can there be? How can there be scientific evidence showing that there's something weird going on when it is in fact people doing it? And of course, at the time that I was having this conversation with Nancy, I didn't realize back then that, Dr. Levengood, who was her main scientist that she used to do the sampling with, wasn't actually in fact a doctor. He'd faked up the credentials of being a doctor, and in subsequent years, it was actually brought out that he wasn't in fact a doctor, and that when he was asked about why he said he was a doctor, he said, well, I am a doctor. I was given an honorary doctorate by the National Academy of Sciences. And the National Academy of Sciences were then contacted to verify this fact, and they said, well, that's not true, because we don't give out honorary doctorates. So not only had Dr. Levengood done the naughty of saying he was a doctor, but he'd actually made it even worse by trying to back it up a second time by saying he got his doctorate somewhere, and he hadn't. So this kind of blew the credibility of Levengood and his research out of the water, because, I mean, you can't go doing that sort of thing. I mean, some people might think it's okay to go calling yourself a doctor, but, it really isn't, because you're trying to assume a position of authority, and you're trying to, sort of tell people that they must believe in your research based on the fact that you have that title. Now, if you don't have the title, you don't have the authority to actually tell people that they should be listening to you in that way. So therefore, this is all wrong. And then, of course, Nancy Tablott, once this came out that Levengood wasn't really a doctor, he was actually just, somebody who's interested in science and has a little bit of training in the background of, but, who knows whether he really is trained at all. It's one of those things, isn't it? How far do you dig to actually prove the point that maybe these people are not who they say they are at all? And the basis that the research work, which had been touted around for so many years as being the de facto reason that we should believe that crop circles can't be made by people, that research was then flawed. So, even to this day, we still hear the Nancy Tablott group and many people saying, oh yes, but what about the nodal bends? And what about the microwave damage and the cellular stuff? And it's still touted round to this day, even though that was based on faulty, flawed research by somebody who, you know, had obviously faked his credentials. Well, if there is actually cellular damage there, and if there is microwave damage, I would imagine that these aren't actually quite what they think they are. It's not actual microwaves that are causing this. It's probably a natural effect in the crop. The trouble is, you can't really call this scientific research until it's backed up by replicated scientific methodology, because that's what science is. You know, scientific theory is, you know, I can come along and say anything I want. So I can say that, you know, I can use the power of my breath to levitate, and this is a scientific theory, you know. You can put that around the place, you can tell people that's a scientific theory. It only becomes a scientific fact when other scientists verify your claims, try to replicate your results, and then it's an accepted scientific fact. Now, nobody has, from independent sources, and we're talking independent sources here now, not, you know, friends of your friends in the crop circle world, Nancy, but independent scientific bodies have actually come forward to replicate these tests, and that hasn't happened. So there's obviously a reason why that hasn't happened, and I think it could be to do with the fact that when you get the nodal bends at the joint of the plant, where the plant tries to grow back towards the light, and the skin on the plant, the surface actually cracks open and seeps the fluid out. This is what you and Dr. Levengood call microwave damage and blown nodes. However, the scientific world of plant biology knows this as phototropism. So it's a well-known fact that takes place. And I think this is why no scientists are interested in dealing with your research, because it isn't really research, it's more proclamation of nonsense, which most serious scientists know is a load of old guff and won't touch it with a barge pole. It's a shame, in fact, that those same scientists don't come out to actually call your bluff and say that this scientific work is wrong, and I wish they would. But we've actually had some people from Italy, such as Francesco Grassi, who has actually taken some of the same work that was done by Nancy Tablott to labs, and they have come forward and said this now, that it is actually wrong, and that all the effects that were claimed by Burke, Levengood and Tablott are in fact perfectly normal, scientifically understood and well documented norms for biology of plants, and there's nothing unusual about it at all. So Francesco Grassi, Grassi, working for the Italian Crop Circle Research Group, you know, have a look out there for his research, because it actually flouts everything to do with Nancy Tablott. So, I mean, I hope this lays it bare now. I might put some links up on this YouTube video so that you can quickly link to this information which refutes the BLT claims, and hopefully then put this one to bed once and for all, because there is no science behind the crop circles. There is no science to speak of behind the crop circles other than real science, which already knows what Burke, Levengood and Tablott have got so seriously wrong.